Piano thunder, lights turn low. Killer spirit starts to glow. Every heartbeat storms the floor. Jerry's fire rides once more. Killer stories, truth and spark. Echoes roll through light and dark. Hear that fever, hear that sound. Jerry Lee is still around. The killer never left. Welcome to Killer Story.
In the summer of 1993, Jerry Lee Lewis, the killer himself, rolled up to Ronnie Wood's home studio in Kildare, Ireland. It was August 2nd, a day that would quietly etch itself into rock folklore. The Rolling Stones were there, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, the whole gang, in the middle of laying down tracks for their next project. And then came Jerry Lee, wild-eyed, untamed, a living force of rock and roll history stepping into their world. The room buzzed the moment he arrived. No one said a word at first because you didn't just meet Jerry Lee Lewis. You felt him. It was Ronnie Wood's idea. The Stones wanted Jerry Lee in the studio to record a few songs with them. If it worked, they were even talking about a whole album. Just the thought of it was electric. Rock legends in one room, testing the chemistry, seeing if the killer could bring his fire to their sound. At the time, Jerry Lee was living in Dublin, Ireland. Not entirely by choice. He was on the run from massive debts to the IRS, and it was his wife Carrie's idea to move him there. So when the Stones invited him to Ronnie Wood's studio in Kildare, he was already in Ireland, a long way from home, but ready to step back into the spotlight. Even though Jerry knew Ronnie, Keith, and the rest of the guys and respected them, his interest in new studio projects at the time was low. To get him into the studio at all, there was really only one thing that could convince him: money. For most people, the Rolling Stones were heroes. But for Jerry, as talented as he knew them to be, they were still the kids who had come after him. He was the master, and they were his students. When Jerry arrived, he made one thing clear in his own mind and to everyone else in the room. He was the star act, and the Stones were there to back him up. Whenever Jerry Lee Lewis sat down at a piano, he was the center of attention, and he was the one who believed that most of all. Instead of following the Stones' suggestions, Jerry wanted to decide which songs would be played. Duets with anyone else weren't even on the table. He chose the songs and they just played. It started as a harmless jam session. Jerry was in incredible form. His voice was thicker, heavier than in his youth, but still full of power. His piano playing was as sharp as ever. And for a while it was fun. For a short time, the Stones were just a bunch of kids watching their idol at work. But Jerry was used to having musicians who could anticipate every move he made, every sudden tempo change, every unexpected twist, every little flourish. He didn't just play the piano, he led it like a conductor leading a symphony he had written in real time. And he expected the band to follow instantly, to feel the music before he even touched a key. The Stones weren't his regular band. They were great musicians, no doubt, but they couldn't always keep up with Jerry's lightning-fast changes, his unpredictable shifts, and the way he would throw in little surprises just to see if they were paying attention. Sometimes they stumbled, but Jerry never missed a beat, pushing them to match his fire while the energy in the room built higher and higher. The Stones were global superstars at the time, while Jerry's last big hit had been 13 years earlier. Naturally, they expected him to at least go along with the project, to meet them halfway. But Jerry never even considered it. He wanted to be number one, the center of attention, and because of that, things didn't go the way anyone had planned. In Jerry's eyes, this was supposed to be a killer album, and the Stones were there to have the honor of being his backing band. But as tensions rose, the Stones began to push back. Arguments flared, especially between Jerry and Keith Richards. Jerry had finally had enough. Whether he didn't care about the opportunity in front of him or simply wasn't aware of it, he let his frustration take over. Alcohol and a few pills had heated the mood, and his temper boiled over. In a long, furious monologue about how no one in the room could match him, he ended the session. He left the Stones standing there like schoolboys and drove home. As he walked out, he threw over his shoulder, "You're fired." As if he could even do that. The man was the greatest, and the ball's on him. Impossible. The facts. Ronnie Wood, in his autobiography Ronnie, refers to a session at his home studio in Kildare, Ireland, where Jerry Lee Lewis was invited to jam with the Rolling Stones. According to Wood, these recordings were made while the band and Jerry Lee were holed up in his studio. Wood writes about the group's interactions, the musical experiments, and the tension, including outtakes that were captured on tape. Archival and bootleg session databases back up the session date and location. On the 2nd of August 1993, there was a jam at Ronnie Wood's Sandymount studio, Kildare, Ireland, involving Jerry Lee Lewis, according to the Rolling Stones Complete Works database. Reported songs from that session include rock and roll and blues standards, e.g. Tutti Frutti, The House of Blue Lights, as well as conversations between Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Wood, and Lewis. Keith Richards, in his memoir Life, refers to the aftermath of the session. After listening to the playbacks, Lewis began criticizing the Stones' playing, something that deeply angered Richards. According to the Voodoo Lounge background, Richards actually wrote the song Sparks Will Fly as a response to that blow-up with Lewis. Although the session was recorded, nothing from these particular takes has ever been officially released. Ronnie Wood is said to still retain the master tapes privately. They remain unpublished and locked away. Some versions or fragments of recordings are referenced in bootleg collector circles, e.g. the bootleg database, DB Boots, but these are not officially sanctioned. In sum, the session lives in that space between myth and documented fact. Wood remembers it vividly in his memoir. Richards acknowledges the friction and creative clash in his book, and that it's a fact the tapes exist. And so the session ended just as quickly as it had begun. Jerry Lee Lewis walked out of Ronnie Wood's studio, leaving the Rolling Stones standing there, stunned, like a bunch of kids caught in the middle of a lesson they hadn't expected to take. The tapes of that day remain locked away, a private glimpse into what could have been a collision of rock legends that never fully came to life. Some stories are meant to be heard only in fragments, whispered in the margins of history. This was one of them, a moment where the past met the present, where the master himself reminded the world who he was and why his fire could never be tamed. Thanks for listening to Killer Stories. Until next time, keep your ears open and your legends alive.